No one would seriously argue about the need to concentrate when you're driving. But when you think about it, a road is probably one of the worst places to try to concentrate on anything. There's a tremendous number of things competing for a driver's attention. At times, keeping your concentration can be like trying to read a complicated book in the middle of a riot. But when you're driving, you can't shut the book. You must keep on concentrating.
When you consider the massive visual information competing for a driver's attention, it makes the task of flying an aircraft seem comparatively easy. And on the ground, a driver also has to cope with distracting sounds, so think twice before you blast someone with the horn.
It's very easy to build in distractions to your driving. One of the classic mistakes that people do make is to put things around the car that are going to distract them. It might be the old dolly dangler, and I think most of those have gone, but it can also be something as simple as putting a parcel, some goods on the seat next to you. Something happens, you have to brake sharply, and suddenly they're on the floor, and instead of forgetting about them, you've worried about it. You've turned down there, and suddenly you're off the road. You could be into a telegraph post, into a pedestrian, into an accident situation. You'll never stop distractions happening. You can certainly guard against having things around the car that are loose and are going to cause distraction. But what you've got to do is condition your mind to react to distractions in such a way that they're a warning sign to immediately say, I must concentrate harder on my driving. Shut out what's happening around you and just be tunnel vision towards your driving and nothing else. It's really the only way that you can beat this distraction business when you're driving. Distractions can occur out in the country too, especially if you're on an unfamiliar road. Road signs are a great help, but what you've got to remember is that you've still got to drive even when you're reading road signs. It's very easy to be thinking about where you're going, pull out into a road like this, and there could be something coming. So you have to build in those little warning signs for yourself in your own road map in your mind and say, if I'm thinking about something else, if I'm thinking about where I'm going, the warning bell goes off, I've got to concentrate that much harder on the actual driving. Out in the country too, you might find that the radio tune has changed and you decide that you're going to try and change the set of the push buttons. Very easy to look down, start fiddling just as you're at the wrong spot, you veer off. Oh, and look, we're lined up with a bridge. Sounds funny, but it's so easy. Just that little bit of a lapse in concentration, thinking about the distraction of the radio, suddenly you're off the road.
Another distraction to be wary of is when something goes wrong with your car. Even a simple flat tyre can make some drivers forget all about road safety and the safety belts. Instead of driving slowly to a safe place, they'll take terrible risks changing a wheel on a narrow piece of road. It really won't hurt the tyres to drive slowly. Always think carefully then before you stop on the road, especially at night when darkness itself can be a distraction.
And you've got to be careful at night if you have to get out of the car. A lot of drivers have been killed, injured, when they've had to stop on a dark road to work on the car, fix a tyre, or even just be at the rear of the car. Very often make a mistake of standing right in front of the taillight. And of course that cuts in halves the amount of visibility you're giving an oncoming driver. Just may not see your vehicle, might think it's just something with one light on that side of the road. The other thing that gives yourself a great chance is to carry a reflective triangle. Now, in overseas countries, it's compulsory. If you stop on a road for a breakdown, puncture, that you have one of these things. It's also compulsory for truckies to have them. And if you ever go on a rally, it's compulsory for all rally cars. They're very simple, and they make just so much sense. Because if you set this out up the road a little bit, you give yourself a tremendous chance of not being struck by an oncoming vehicle.
The list of things that can distract you from the task of driving goes on and on. Even just being too intent on talking or listening might lose you those critical microseconds that you need in an emergency.
So there you are. No one ever said it was easy to concentrate on your driving. But the trick is to turn all those distractions into warning bells that say, hang on, I'm behind the wheel for just one thing, and that's to drive safely. Just hold it there. Has this driver, who's about to move off, already begun to show the kind of poor judgment that can begin a chain of events that ultimately ends in a crash? Let's just take a closer look.
Had the driver taken the trouble to check, then this bottle in front of the rear wheel would have been obvious, and there wouldn't have been the risk of scuffing this tyre against the curb. And maybe it would have been noticed this tyre was underinflated. And inside the car, papers on the dashboard, a dirty windscreen, sunglasses on the loose, all distractions. The handbag could have been placed safely on the rear floor. Even worse, this beach umbrella is there ready to impale someone. Even light objects can become projectiles in a crash. New research shows that carelessness can be the trademark of a crash-prone driver.
Well, we had 3 groups, and with one that had special training to be aware of that sort of problem in judgment. One had received a book to read about it, and one had had no intervention at all. And in fact, the results were very encouraging because those that we'd trained performed much better on the road. They not only picked up these problems, but also hazards on the road they were alert to.
So you feel from the study there is a chance to improve people's driving through proper training?
I think so. We can't do anything about personalities, but we can certainly do something about attitudes. And that was brought out in an aviation study that we conducted also with a group of pilots.
Research seems to indicate that even the approach to a pre-flight check can be very important. Pilots who are made aware that they're responsible for their safety seem to develop better judgment. They are less likely to get into situations they can't handle. When you bring this down to earth, Dr. Telfer's findings seem to be in line with our Drive Alive theme. That is, that no matter what happens, ultimately it is the driver who's responsible.
What we were testing were some of the attitudes that we thought underlay accidents, things like the macho attitude or anti-authority or invulnerability, the fact that we never think it'll happen to us. But in fact, we think there's an overarching and overriding consideration. It's something like taking responsibility for the car and for your control of it on the road. Drivers have to take responsibility.
And do you feel drivers are not taking that responsibility?
Yes, in my view, and our results bore this out. I showed them to you a little while ago, and you'll note that some of the most basic things, such as taking a broken bottle from under a tyre or driving off with a tyre against the curb, the greater majority of our drivers, even those we'd trained, were still susceptible to that sort of behaviour.
Dr. Telfer found the failure of drivers to take responsibility flowed through to them not noticing pedestrians or failing to anticipate and react to hazards.
One finding, as far as I'm concerned, is that we should start trying to introduce this responsibility from the youngsters who are pedestrians, through the bike riders, through to car drivers, and it's one we're going to have to reinforce.
Drivers should run over an aircraft type I'm safe checklist before driving. I for illness, do I have any symptoms? M for medication, have I been taking prescription or over-the-counter drugs? S for stress, am I under psychological pressure from the job, under physical stress, worried about financial matters? A for alcohol, have I been drinking or using non-prescribed drugs within 8 hours, within 24 hours? F for fatigue, am I tired and not adequately rested? E for eating, am I adequately nourished? All these things can mean a safer run on the road.
Here's some graphic proof that crash situations can have simple beginnings. Remember last month when I cautioned about being distracted by something falling off the seat while you're driving? Well, this car belongs to a colleague. It was parked outside her house, and the damage was done by a driver who was trying to save a cake falling off the front seat. Fortunately, no one was injured in the accident, but it is a reminder that when you're driving, you should concentrate fully on nothing else but driving.